Why does the internet refer to this woman as the killer grandma? Well, have a seat and let me tell you about it. So our story today begins with this woman, Lois. And back in 2018 when this story takes place, she's about 56 years old and she's living in Minnesota. And when Lois's parents passed away some time ago, they left her and her siblings a trust fund, and Lois is in charge of managing that trust fund. Here's the thing about Lois though. She has a bit of a problem, a gambling problem. And over the years, this problem has only grown more and more. She just can't stay out of casinos. And according to at least one person who knows her, Lois ends up spending about $400,000 of that trust fund money on her addiction. $400,000 fucking dollars. I get mad when I lose $20 in a slot machine. But anyway, Lois has a husband, this guy, David. And when David finds out how much money she's blown on gambling, he gets mad, and rightfully so. So David takes away her credit cards and also takes her name off all of his bank accounts. So now how is Lois going to feed her addiction? She has no money of her own, and she has no access to her husband's money anymore. So this knucklehead rubs her two brain cells together and she comes up with a plan. She's just gonna unalive David and steal his money. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? So one day, David comes home from work from the worm farm he works on. And he and Lois begin arguing, I'm assuming it's over money, and things get heated, and Lois pulls out a hand cannon, and she shoots David in the chest twice, and unfortunately, he doesn't make it. Then Lois goes and gets a blanket and drapes it over David's body and just leaves him on the bathroom floor. Next, she goes and gets some checks of David's from the worm farm, and she begins writing amounts out to herself, forging David's signature. First, she writes herself a check for $1,000, then she does it again for $2,500. And she also takes David's credit cards and starts using them for things like meals at fancy restaurants, and she goes and gets her hair did, and of course she goes and gambles at casinos. I'm rich, bitch! So some time goes by, and eventually David's coworkers get suspicious and wonder where he's been. And when one of his coworkers, Greg, texts David, he gets some responses that make him even more suspicious. The text responses he's getting don't sound like David at all. Like he's abbreviating some words, which I guess he never does, and just other things that don't add up. And when Greg calls Lois to ask where David's been, she just kind of blows him off and says, "Oh, he's been feeling under the weather lately, but I'm sure he'll get better soon." But now Lois knows that she has to do something, so she comes up with yet another plan. She writes herself one final check from David's account in the amount of $7,500, then she steals his Escalade and flees to Florida. But back in Minnesota, Greg has finally had enough. So he contacts police, and police go to David and Lois's house, and of course that's where they find David's body. Fast forward a few days, and Lois has made her way down to Fort Myers Beach, Florida. And while she's down there, she comes up with another diabolical plan. This time, she's going to find someone who looks like her, steal their identity, so she can evade capture from police.
Sometimes my genius is... it's almost frightening.
Again, what could go wrong? So she goes out to this restaurant, and in that restaurant, she sees this woman, Pamela, sitting alone at the bar. And Pamela happens to look a lot like Lois. So Lois sits next to her, and they begin talking, and they have a few drinks, and they're having a great time. So Pamela eventually invites Lois back to her hotel room. And at some point that evening in that hotel room, Lois again pulls out her hand cannon, and she shoots Pamela twice, and she doesn't make it either. The next morning, Lois, who's now pretending to be Pamela, calls the front desk of the hotel, and she lets them know that she's going to request to stay 3 extra days. She then takes Pamela's ID and credit cards, and she goes down to the parking lot and steals Pamela's Acura, and she takes off. Next, she goes to an ATM, and using Pamela's credit card, she withdraws $5,000. And the next day, she does it again for $1,500. The day after that, April 9th, a hotel worker back at the hotel in Fort Myers Beach, Florida, ends up finding Pamela's body, so she contacts police. So police show up to do their investigation, and they check out some CCTV footage from the hotel, and they see Lois and Pamela go into a room, and using that footage along with some eyewitness testimony, they're able to identify who Lois is. And pretty quickly, this story blows the fuck up. So much so that US Marshals are now involved. So the Marshals put out a BOLO alert on her, or be on the lookout, for her and the Acura. And pretty soon, the Marshals receive a tip that the stolen Acura has been seen traveling through Louisiana and Texas. And while she's on the run, of course, Lois has to stop at some casinos and do some gambling. I mean, that addiction must be hella strong if she blew $400,000. Fast forward a few days to April 19th, and Lois is spotted by a couple workers at a restaurant in South Padre Island, Texas. So these employees call the police, and police show up, and they're searching the parking lot for the Acura. And this parking lot of this restaurant also happens to share some parking spaces with the restaurant next door. And wouldn't you know it, police find the Acura in the parking lot of that restaurant that's next door. So police burst in and they see Lois sitting at the bar and they immediately arrest her. And when police go to search the hotel room she was staying at South Padre Island, they find Pamela and David's IDs along with both of their credit cards. And also 2 hand cannons. Why does she need 2? I guess because America. So Lois is eventually extradited back to Florida, where she pleads guilty to first-degree murder and grand theft auto and a couple of other charges. She's then extradited back to Minnesota to face charges there, and she pleads guilty again to first-degree murder, and so she receives a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Here's her mugshot. Don't get addicted to gambling, boys and girls. Oh yeah, and don't unalive people. Unaliving people is bad. So that's going to do it, guys. Thanks a bunch if you made it this far, and I hope to see you in the next one.